What's going on, everybody? This is Mazique, aka UniqueMazique, the hardest working man in sports and gaming, and we're back with another episode of At Me Bro. And I'm here with my man, my co-host, Nelson Blake, aka Books. Nelson Blake II, aka Books. What's going on, man?
How's it going, Brian? How you doing today? Merry Christmas, happy holidays, holiday special.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Same to you, sir. Yeah, we are blessed to be here, everybody. You know what I mean? If you're here able to talk, if you're here able to listen, if you're here able to see, you know, you're fortunate. It's somebody that don't have those senses available to them right now. So it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing. I hope everybody got what they wanted for Christmas. And if you didn't get it, I hope you're still hopeful that you're going to get it next year or something. So if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. Click the subscribe button now. Also, if you haven't liked this video, do that now. Just trust me, you're gonna like it. I know we just started, but just trust me. Just trust me, you're gonna like it. Also, we're still hunting 10,000 cumulative views for the for this show itself and the segments. So what we want to do is ultimately we're going to branch it out and have At Me Bro have its own YouTube channel. So that's something that's still a goal. So if you can help assist in doing that by liking the video, sharing the video, so on and so forth. So we appreciate all of that support. Let's jump into our first topic, which is something that I'm going to talk about. There's a lot going on with this. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to let y'all in on a little bit of some show secrets, right? Each segment is supposed to have a certain time limit, but I could see how this one might run over. I can see. So I'm preparing my producer, which is my lovely wife, that this one has run over potential. So UFC 232, it's the year-end show for the UFC, the largest mixed martial arts promotion in the United States for sure. John Jones is coming back from his latest suspension. He was cleared by the California State Athletic Commission to participate. Now, this event was originally scheduled to take place in Las Vegas, but John, now I don't want to say he tested positive because that is clearly Jeff Nowitzki, who is the anti-doping specialist with UFC, and Dana White they very much want you to know that he did not test positive again. But what was found was microscopic traces of turinabol in his blood and urine. And from what we're told, turinabol, of course, is the same drug that he tested positive for when he got his most recent suspension, which came after he defeated Daniel Cormier the second time. But it was deemed that at that time, the amount of turinabol that was in his blood was so small, there was no way that he had done it intentionally or that he had any athletic advantage over Cormier. But the thing about turinabol is that turinabol stays in your body for up to 3 years because it stores itself in your fat and throughout other aspects of your body. So most were told that there's a possibility that he could, throughout tests moving forward, you could still see traces of turinabol in his body for up to 3 years after this, right? So, but because of that and the confusion, Nevada State Athletic Commission, which is where the UFC 232 was supposed to take place, they would not give John Jones a license. According to Dana White, you take this with a grain of salt, take this for whatever you think it's worth. He said that if there were more time, they could have gotten John Jones clear for Saturday. But because they didn't have enough time, they decided to move the event to California, to the Inglewood, the Fabulous Forum, former home of the Lakers. And so because he was cleared in California State, so it's in California, so bam, bam, there, it makes sense to them. I understand that. I do, to a degree. But the manner in which the UFC has handled this is just classic UFC type of garbage. It really is. First of all, they did not call and notify the other fighters on the card.
I heard they found that on Twitter.
They were finding out on Twitter.
That's so classless and horrible.
That is classic UFC. They were finding out. So myself as a MMA writer for Forbes and for Heavy.com, myself, other writers within the sport, Ariel Helwani, I mean, all of the people who, you know, I'm not putting myself in that category, but all of these, the main names in terms of MMA media are all discussing this situation, and fighters are like literally chiming in like, what? Wait, what? Like, so we know their business before they do.
Yeah.
And it's really crazy. I'm talking about Chris Justino, who is arguably the greatest female mixed martial artist ever. And she's the co-main event on the card, fighting Amanda Nunes. She finds out on the internet.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Not only are they inconvenienced, I mean, not only is this happening and they're not finding out or whatever, not only are they inconvenienced by having to move their camps. So the final week and a half, whatever their final prep, whatever that looks like for them. Usually a fighter comes into town where the event is going to be the same week of a fight. And they do their last, you know, the rest of their weight cut, and everything just all comes down to a head within the same state, right? So all of these fighters had this plan as they normally would. And the UFC all of a sudden, just like that, drops everything, changes everything because of John Jones. And this, I don't think this is really his fault this particular time, but it just doesn't look good to fighters. It doesn't look good to fans. It doesn't look good to other organizations. It just doesn't look good. And I mean, it's insane, man. John is like that kid, right, in high school who has done a ton of stuff. No, not even in high school, in grammar school, who has done a ton of stuff wrong, right? And he does so much wrong that even when some trouble happens that is technically not his fault,
right, he still gets the same.
He still gets the blame because he's always the one doing something anyway.
So what do you say to the people that say this is BS, this is all covering up for the fact that he juiced again? Do you think that's totally out of line?
I do, because the thing of it is, I think it's people not really knowing the details of his of the test that he's failed in the past.
Can I jump in on that real quick? Because I think that's an excellent point. And I hate to start the show off agreeing with you, but unfortunately, I think you are correct in this one. Back in the 1980s, when steroids was huge with bodybuilders and football players, not saying it isn't now.
Oh, right.
But when it first came out, what they were, what they did, and so on and so forth, because guys have obviously been juicing for a while, and they really cracked down. There was this, I don't want to say caricature because it actually is true for some people, but there's this one image of steroids that people had where it was basically you take roids, you get massively gigantic, like the baseball players did. You get the back knee, you start beating up your wife and kids, you're super aggressive all the time. Yeah. And you know, and you just is a super soldier serum. Turns you into Venom. Right? Yeah.
Like the defensive lineman on the program. Remember the movie The Program?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and there was a lot of stuff that came out about that stuff, and rightfully so. But the thing is, nutrition and supplements have changed and evolved so much over time that I think people go in with the mentality that all steroid uses, all steroid tests are created equal. When the truth of the matter is that the science is extremely complicated. Yes. And while we can both agree, look, it's you and your camp's job to make sure that whatever you take doesn't have this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. I get that. And I get that 99.999% of the time that someone's juicing and they get caught, they lie when they get caught. I get that too. But at the same time, I think that cartoony idea of steroids and people, you know, rubbing deer antlers on their knees,
Yeah.
All that stuff is a little, what happens is when people hear information, they process it through that filter and they don't understand that this is actual science. And there are things that are not banned one year that are banned another year. There's a whole bunch of stuff that me and you can legally take. Our doctor will say is good to take that these guys can't take because they feel it's giving an advantage. And there's some stuff that's giving them an advantage that's totally okay. Like, we don't understand all of the minutia of this stuff. Most people had never heard the word picogram before this came out right now. Right. And if you understand the math and science of a picogram and how small it is, I saw this one discussion where we were talking about they confuse the half-life of a substance with the trace amount detection of a substance.
Yes.
Which scientifically is idiotic. That's like confusing a stain and a smell.
Yeah. But the thing of it is, if both terms are foreign to you, it's easy to get confused.
Exactly. And so while I totally understand the ideas, it seems to me more implausible when you look at all of the people talking about the science of it and what has happened and the fact that this has actually happened to other people. In fact, we talk about Alonzo Trier. I believe that's what happened to him.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It's exactly. It's almost exactly.
It's basically exactly the same thing. And the science agrees on that. Like, no one is saying that that's not what happened. That's not something that his quote unquote camp, when he was an NCAA player for Arizona, when he was a freshman and sophomore for Arizona, nobody was coming out and defending him with like a John Jones MMA USADA conspiracy to defend this kid. That's just what the science says. So people say, why doesn't this happen to other people? Actually, it does happen to other people, and it has happened. But testing is constantly evolving. These processes are constantly evolving. And speaking of the process, I want to ask you about this. So in Hollywood, people know I work for Marvel Comics, and as a guy who works for Marvel, I have a lot of friends who work on films and TV shows. And one thing that is famously true about Hollywood is no matter what you have going on, because the positions are so specialized, that when the holidays come around, the one person who can get a deal done might just be on vacation. And it seems like what Dana White was saying was that because this happened around the holidays, and you can't just pick a athletic commission judge up off the street, off reserve, we physically could not get this worked out. And so we had to scramble. And it almost seems like they thought they might be able to get it worked out, but heads just didn't show up to be able to go over the information because it just is a process. And that process can't happen over the holidays when there's only but so many people that could do it, and then people's on vacation. Right.
And here's the thing. John Jones and Dana White are in very much the same situation, right? So the reason why people, like, in conjunction with people's just general ignorance about this topic, right? One of the reasons why people are so quick and so ready to jump against John and to blame him and say, oh, you messed up again, is because you have literally messed up with indisputably negative drugs. Like, you've been on cocaine, you've been an alcoholic, you've been involved in a DUI where you had a hit and run with a pregnant woman and you ran off and left the scene. Like, that's happened to you, right? So now when this goes on, especially from with a bunch of people who don't know the difference about anything, they hear the word drugs, they go, yeah, oh, he did it again. Same thing with Dana White. Dana White lies so often. He sells crap so often that now he sits up and says, oh, it's the holidays, we couldn't get anybody to Everybody goes, oh no, that's just Dana with some more crap. This is a conspiracy. You did this to hide the fact that he did that, because there's a lot of people, and it's starting to come out even more, who believe that the entire Conor McGregor bus attack thing was a orchestrated publicity stunt. I said that back then. But now Michael Chiesa, one of the fighters who was injured during the attack, his attorney says that he has proof that that's what this was. So that's part of their civil suit against Conor McGregor now. So they better hope something happens. There's a massive payoff that goes on there, because I don't think that's anything that the UFC or Conor McGregor wants to have unearthed. So that kind of thing, and Dana White being involved or associated with that kind of thing is one of the reasons why people don't believe him either.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so crazy, man. I was talking to my wife yesterday. Well, actually, I told you this holiday thing has a nights going super long. So it was actually this morning. We were talking about the dynamic between John Jones and Daniel Cormier, because John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson, which is who he's fighting on Saturday, it's a rematch of his toughest fight. It's the only fight I've ever seen John in that I'm not sure that he won. Right. It's the only one.
He won, but I understand that.
Yeah, it's the only one I'm not sure that he won. Right. Because it was wow. It was one of those fights. Right.
Just to clarify real quick, I want you to hold your point. But when you say you don't believe he won, you mean that in turn, because there's two ways to win a fight. Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's the fight and then there's the match. The match is based off of scoring.
Right.
I can understand how that would be in dispute.
That's the only way I think. I don't think about that.
It's pretty clear John Jones beat him up.
Well, I don't know, because John Jones beat him up in the 5th round. But if you say for instance,
in the 4th round
at the end of the 4th round, but say for instance, you didn't see the fight, right? Yeah. And you just saw the two guys after the fight, you would think that Gustafsson won.
I actually think well, I don't agree with that, but I actually think that is why people think Gustafsson won, because the nature of that fight was that John spent most of his time attacking Gustafsson's foundation, just attacking. He didn't attempt to punch Gustafsson in the face as much as Gustafsson attempted to punch John in the face.
Well, he did more than attempt. He succeeded on a number of occasions.
What I'm going to say is that Gustafsson did a lot of surface damage to John, and John did a lot of foundational damage to Gustafsson. But I think we have a heavy prejudice towards surface damage, and I think that warped the outcome of the fight, because I watched it several times to really get a clear look. And I don't think as a fight it was that close. As a match, it was close because the first 3 rounds you could have a lot of debate about. I think John won the 4th and the 5th, but there is a valid perspective to say that Gustafsson won the first 3 rounds. I don't agree with that perspective, but I think it's valid. But as a fight, I don't think the fight was as close as people thought it was.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as a match, as a match, okay, John did the most eye-popping damage in the last round, because he literally almost finished him, right? Yeah. At no point did Gustafsson almost finish John. At no point, right? So but I never judge fights that way, because I know how fights are supposed to be judged. Yeah. People like to judge fights like the same way they would judge it if they were watching it in an alley, and that's not the way you do it.
Correct. I think it's a factor, though. I think, and that's why.
I think it's only a factor for people who don't. I think it's only a factor for people who don't understand.
Well, that's why they have significant strikes, because significant strikes is to include the idea that if one guy pity pats another guy for 40 punches, and another guy rocks your face 3 times in a row, we can't grade it like it's legitimately 40-3, when we know that, especially according to styles and the way you win a fight, you might sacrifice points for damage in order to get what you want. And I actually do think that is a part of the factor of John and Gustafsson in that first fight. Although I totally agree that this was one of the most challenging fights he had.
It was absolutely his most challenging fight.
Yeah, and I think that I do think it was close on the scoring, but I do think that John made some clear sacrifices. And this is where I would disagree with you. I think the 4th round should definitely be included, because first of all, I think John won the 4th round hands down. It's just it took place in the last minute and a half or so, and he hurt him really bad in that 4th round. And I think the reason he hurt him that bad was he built up to it. He didn't just catch him. The work that he put in the first 3 rounds, beating up his legs, spin kicking him to the body constantly, it did slow Gustafsson down in many ways. And I think John was also figuring him out. And I've seen Hopkins do that. And Hopkins would almost lose a fight on points because he was sacrificing 5 rounds clean on just downloading data on his opponent and then hope he scored enough in the end. So, I wanted to get your opinion on that. What was you going to say about Cormier and their relationship?
Well, Before I do that, let me just kind of close my point with close a rebuttal on the Jones Gustafson thing. Jones Gustafson to me, I think is very similar to who's a fight? Which fight can I guess it doesn't really compare. I was trying to find a Floyd Mayweather fight where there was a strong contest for him. But he still won the fight. Like I think that you could make a case, right? I think that you could make a case that Gustafsson won the second through fourth round. I think you could make a case. Now, I don't think that Gustafsson got robbed. I don't think that at all. So I don't think that at all. I mean, because if you just look at like significant strikes throughout the entire, and first of all, let me also say this. This is what I really meant to say. Significant strikes itself is a conceptually good statistic, but it's flawed in many ways in the way that it's calculated. Like, I think conceptually it's a good statistic. Overall, scoring in MMA is flawed, period. Right. And I would say it's just basically essentially flawed in most combat sports, period. The whole concept of 10-9 and what constitutes a 10-9 and what constitutes a 10-8 is flawed. Because what happens is in a fight, in a mixed martial arts contest, you have two guys battling, right? And you have 1 or 2 rounds that are pretty close. But one guy might get the edge just simply because he was pressing forward a little bit more. Right. So then you get the third and the fourth round and you get the other guy clearly win the round. Now, he doesn't knock him down, but he clearly wins the round. He lands
10-9.
And they're both 10-9.
Right.
And now at the end of 4 rounds, you have an even fight on the scorecards, but you clearly don't have an even fight to the eye because the one guy did far more damage without a knockdown than the guy did. So that right there in itself is really flawed.
I agree.
And it also comes about in other ways, like the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight is the same, is a good concept, right? Mm-hmm. Tyson Fury should have had a bigger lead over Deontay Wilder than he had because many of those rounds early he won by a more clearly, right, than Deontay Wilder did. Now, Deontay Wilder definitely, if you knock a guy down, technically that probably should be 10-5.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you because there's not enough room to really accurately judge the fight. Because here's the thing, to kind of put it into almost math terms. If I outpunch you 50-30, I get a 10-9 round. Mm-hmm. If I outpunch you 50-10, I get a 10-9 round.
unless you knocked me down, unless you had me staggered on the ropes or whatever, which is absolutely it's ridiculous.
In fact, I could have even said 50-45, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times, like you said, you have this feeling out period where they're both figuring each other out, and really nobody should get a round.
No, right. And that's the thing. It's considered, taboo to score a round even. Yeah. When in actuality, there's a lot of rounds that should be even because nobody gained a competitive advantage.
Which and because we admit that there's a lot of wriggle room in this. Mm-hmm. That's why I distinguish between the match and the fight.
Yes,
I heavily disagree with you on the fourth round. I would love for you to. I would almost like to watch the fourth round with you again. Mm-hmm. But I think John won the fight in that fourth round. He figured him out late in that fourth round. He hurt him late in that fourth round, and in the fifth round he moved to it again. And here's the point for the fight coming on, even though we don't want to get into predictions just yet. I feel like John, the way he approached the camp is why he didn't finish the fight. I don't think it was Gustafsson was why.
Oh no, don't get me wrong. John is a better fighter than Alexander Gustafsson. He is. Gustafsson poses him a different threat because of the length. And John has to fight him different than every other person that he fights because there is no other light heavyweight that he's faced yet that has that type of length and athleticism. Because Gustafsson's not just a big guy; he moves well.
He's quick, he moves great. And actually, I will give Gustafsson credit on one thing. I think his punching skill is ahead of John's punching skill.
He's a more natural striker than John.
I would say puncher specifically.
Puncher, yeah, I would agree with
elbows
that.
and knees.
Yes,
and
he's a more
kicks, and John has the whole deal. But when John decides to sit up there and box him, it's not a good look for John.
So. It's not. I think
John knows that now.
That's exactly my point. I think that through the first 3 rounds, he tried to box.
Yeah,
too much. Not totally.
I would say too much, because my point is that the reason the 4th and 5th round went the way they went is from when he didn't try to box. All the work that he did as a kickboxer, as a Muay Thai fighter, that stuff was good for John.
Yes.
And paid off later on.
Gustafsson as well is a guy who later in fights has traditionally had a fall off. Gustafsson is a world beater for 2 rounds.
Yeah.
3rd round on, so he hasn't had a ton of 5-round fights, but 3rd round on is when you start to see a little bit of a slowdown. I'm sure John probably knew that, which was the reason why he had the foundational attack, which is why you kick the legs. It's just why you go to the body.
Take him into deep waters and then.
And also, John probably also knows that while we're the same height, or we're close in height, he's actually a half inch taller than John.
Yeah.
My legs are longer.
Right.
And
use your legs.
I'm going to use my legs to use the spin kicks. So it's not that I'm questioning. I mean, you never know what's going, because I don't know which John Jones we're going to see on Saturday, because he's a human being, and you can only go through these really serious issues, life issues, so often before it starts to affect. So I'm hoping that he's okay. But if John is John, he's going to stop Gustafsson Saturday.
Okay, so
if he's John,
stop him. I do think it's highly possible that he stops him, particularly because my overall assessment is they both had some back and forth in the first 3 rounds. A lot of ways you can interpret that. And because there's a lot of ways you can interpret that, I'm not going to debate it, because I think every side has a valid case because of what we discussed earlier. There's wiggle room. It's not an exact science. But the 4th round, I felt like John figured him out from a technical standpoint. And what I mean by that is John saw Gustafsson's angles differently. It wasn't just that Gustafsson was tired or slower. I actually credit Gustafsson. He was in great shape and was still moving well. But I think John legitimately saw the holes.
Yeah, definitely.
In the 4th round. I think because John was so out of shape, and I mean, because he was a little chubby in that fight.
Yeah, he had tied on a ridiculous hangover, and he said it. He was like, dude, he was like, I got blacked out drunk.
Yeah. And he looked like.
Yeah.
So it just everything, all of his gestures. But when you look at John's eyes in that fight, he was looking at Gustafsson's movements totally differently in the 4th. It wasn't just the fatigue, because I agree with you about taking him into deep waters and all that stuff. So I think now that John's taking him seriously and taking himself seriously, I do think that Gustafsson's such a capable striker. I don't think John's going to like maul him necessarily. But I think even if the fight plays out exactly the same from a technical standpoint, just John having better training, he'll finish him in the 4th.
I'm going to be honest. I don't think it's going to look competitive.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's true.
If he's John, I don't think it's going to look competitive, because this dude is so freaking gifted.
Yeah.
In every way that there is where there is value as a fighter. He is built different, physically built different.
Yeah.
He sees fights differently in the midst of them than most people. And he is a real athlete. Yeah. A lot of mixed martial artists aren't athletes. They're trained fighters.
Right.
But if you have a trained fighter who is also a world-class, I mean, it's literally in his genes.
Yeah, he has everything.
He has 2 brothers in his family that play in the NFL. Yeah. It's in his genes that to be an athlete. And he has the mind of a fighter. This is the reason why he's like the perfect storm as a fighter. So if he's plugged in it's not going to be competitive, and he's going to punish him because of some of the things that are being said. And John, John was on Twitter last night. And I'm gonna get to the Daniel Cormier thing in a second, because this is a good segue for it. I told you, Porsche, this one had the potential to run over. but John was on Twitter last night, and he asked for walkout songs ideas. So obviously, he opened up the floodgates. People are talking about Amy Winehouse rehab, all kinds of stuff, But to me, I think the mentality that he needs to be in is Tupac, Me Against the World. That's where if he's really looking for a walkout song, that should be it. Because the way this has played out, almost every fighter's blaming you. All of the fans are blaming you. All of your rivals are coming at you on Twitter. Like, dude, what I was going to say about Daniel Cormier, John brings out the absolute worst in that man.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, Cormier is such a well-spoken, reasonable, almost sweet man.
Yes,
he is.
When it comes to him,
so ignorant and like
he goes nuts, man. It's like the dude, he has this thing over him. It's like and I kind of think it has something to do with this, right? Daniel Cormier was bullied very severely as a kid. Like, like he doesn't even really get into it in specifics, but he said things like, I was bullied like you wouldn't believe. Right? I think that John reminds him of those guys. Yeah,
probably. And for John to be better than him, and quite frankly,
yes.
If it wasn't for John Jones, Daniel Cormier would arguably be the greatest of all time.
I don't think it's an argument.
Well, I say arguably because there's going to be a lot of, George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva people out there. But
the thing of it is that Daniel
in that conversation, and the only reason he's not is because of John Jones.
I think people still put him in that conversation. The people who put more weight on John Jones's drug test, because I think those people put him in that conversation. I don't, for that reason that you mentioned, because you haven't beaten the guy. You faced a guy twice who I actually believe is the greatest of all time, and you lost. So
this goes back to the cartoony thing about steroids.
Yeah.
Listen, unless you in a Marvel comic, there ain't nothing that you could have given John Jones that he wouldn't have gotten arrested for, that would have resulted in the beatdown that he put on Cormier in that second fight.
Well, I mean, you know what the funny thing of it was he didn't put a beat down on him for the whole fight. He was winning the fight, but he caught him. Yeah. And so, he got caught.
But here's the thing, and this goes back to the spacing thing, right? Cormier is so great at establishing this odd spacing where you can't really get him and he can get you in so many ways. And John Jones accepted that and demolished it.
Well, John is a master of space and distance.
Yes.
He is a master of space and time, and timing. He really is, man. He knows, and you can't teach anybody this.
No.
This is the same way that Kyrie Irving beats guys off the dribble and stuff.
Rhythm. He just got rhythm like a jazz musician.
And I see you, and I know exactly how close you are.
Yes.
And I know exactly from a timing standpoint what I need to do to meet you where you are. And I'll beat you to the punch every time.
Yep.
And the fact that my arms go forever only helps.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that my legs go forever only helps.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I don't really get tired.
Mm-hmm.
Because you very rarely see John breathing hard at the end of a fight.
It was just the Gustafsson, and that's why with the Gustafsson fight, we're looking at it like, man, you must have really. Because he had Gustafsson beat, and he just chose to lean on him.
he got pushed. He got pushed more. Like, the only other time I've seen John close to losing was Vitor Belfort caught him in an arm bar, and he dislocated John's elbow.
Yeah.
And John let his elbow get dislocated to spin out of the hold.
Which is crazy.
And then moments later tapped Vitor out.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude is insane.
It's insane. No, he's 5-star.
Yeah, I mean, he's
insane.
Yeah, he's insane.
Which is why it's such a shame that he can't keep it together. Although
he can't get out his own way.
The one thing and before we hop off this, I don't want to completely absolve him of it, because it's like, if you weren't abusive in the first place, you wouldn't be in this situation. And it's all part of it. You don't get to ask for fairness.
You right.
You screw up. You just have to own up for whatever the consequences are. I hope that, you know, this is all true and that he's clean, because I want a fair fight. I want a great fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like redemption stories. If he's doing the right things, I want him to be rewarded for doing the right things. But he doesn't get to say, and he, to his credit, he apologized outright. He didn't make a bunch of excuses.
He didn't blame nobody else or anything like that.
Yeah, he accepted that responsibility. But that's just where we are.
Yeah.
You know? That's just where we are right now.
Yeah, it is, man. It's like if you're a husband that constantly cheats on your wife, and this one particular time the lady was actually flirting with you, and your wife is literally going off on you about it, you can't really get an attitude.
No. You guys say you wrong, but you have every right to be wrong.
Right. You can't really get an attitude. You just kind of got to take it and go like, babe, I really didn't do nothing this time. I swear, I really didn't. You got to be as humble as possible as you say, I really didn't do it that time.
Right.
You know, that's all you can do. That's all you can do. But let's jump off from one absolute superstar to the next absolute superstar in a different sport. LeBron James and the Lakers took down the Golden State Warriors in Oakland on Christmas Day. LeBron strained his groin, which doesn't appear to be a serious situation.
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't appear to be anything serious. But my question is, what should we take from that victory? Because Golden State had all of their people.
Yeah, I think, well, not DeMarcus Cousins, but
yeah,
we don't know what that's going to
We don't know what that means yet.
Right. But as presently constructed, right? What you can actually take from it is, number one, Draymond Green needs to fix his jumper ASAP. He looking like Markelle Fultz out there.
I mean, man, dude. What, like, I didn't realize how much of a downgrade as a player he is when he just literally can't make the three. He just can't make it.
Literally needs to make the three.
Now he's like not like if you were speaking in 2K terms, and I don't know where they have his rating or whatever, but if he was an 87 before, dude, he's got to be like an 80 now.
77.
Something. I mean, it's because you were talking about it.
That's what happened. He goes from a 3-and-D to a pure lock.
I mean,
that's not good enough.
And that's not good enough, man. And I mean, the fall off has been it's startling.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's not just the fall. Here's the thing, B, because there's perception and reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the perception around Rondo is that Rondo can't shoot, but the reality is Rondo shoots just fine. He fixed his jump shot at some point in the last few years.
Right.
And his shot is, in fact, at times he shot very, very well.
Yes.
But attached to that reality is that even though he's fixed his shot, he's not a shooter.
Exactly.
You can't just look at his percentages and say he's good or he's bad. Same thing in the reverse for a guy like, say, Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant started the year very cold from the three-point line. Mm-hmm. But we know he's a pure shooter, right?
And he's just from another planet. So
right. So you're like, yeah, but eventually those are going. The problem with Draymond is Draymond looks like a guy who has lost the ability to shoot.
And not only has he lost the ability, he's lost the confidence that he's even capable.
That's my point. So when he's taking the shot, people are like, yeah, you go ahead and shoot it.
Did you see that he had a three that was so wide open, man. There wasn't anybody.
Shot an air ball?
No, he didn't even shoot it. I mean, I'm talking about the next closest man to him was above the free throw line. And he double pump. Oh yeah, I think he did shoot an air ball.
Yeah.
He drove in and tried to shoot a floater, and it missed everything. I'm like, dude, you look like one of those kids that I like when you coach youth basketball and you see a kid that's like who is scared to death to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And they just don't want to make a mistake, and then they just like literally throw up an air ball. That's what that looked like. And so and it's a disturbing trend, because if you look at his 3-point shooting in his career in the 15-16 season, he shot like 39%, right? The next season, he shot just under 31%. Then last season, he shot 30%.
Mm-hmm.
Now this season, he's shooting 22%. So his 3-point percentage has dropped each of the last 3 years.
What's changed in those last 3 years?
Winning.
Nope. Kevin Durant.
Kevin Durant, yeah. Well, yeah, I guess the dip started. Well, this is their 3rd year together. Yeah, you're right. That could very well be it. It's yeah, you're right.
I think Draymond is not a fundamentally strong enough shooter to not have attention placed on his place in the offense.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like Clay. Clay could not shoot for the month and pop off on you for 60.
Yeah, he's still struggling though.
He is, but again, if Clay popped off for 75 points tomorrow, would anybody be surprised?
No.
Right. So, and that's the entire point, right? But with Draymond, he needs to be consistent in his attempts, in the spots he's getting his shots, and how often he's getting his shots, and how he's practicing getting those things. And the thing is, they don't practice, right?
Right.
They're veteran. They've been to the finals too many times. They can't practice. It's not they're not practicing because they're lazy. If they practice, they will probably get hurt more. They can't afford that.
Right.
So they can't practice. So he can't really manufacture game-ish practice situations to remedy this problem in practice. So he has to remedy this problem in NBA games when he's getting inconsistent attempts. And now people are starting to leave him open, which adds to the lack of confidence. So I do think that that's something we can legitimately take away from the game.
You know, I don't know that it's even about the lack of shots. I definitely think it's Durant, but I don't think it's the lack of shots. I think it's the way the shots are coming.
That's what I mean. When I say lack of shots, I don't just mean the number, because numbers can be very deceiving.
Yeah.
It's where are you getting the shots? When are you getting the shots? How are you getting the shots? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Listen, him getting a shot off of a pass from Jonas Jerebko is different from a pick and roll with Steph Curry.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's a different shot.
Yeah.
So when I say shots, I don't just mean the number. I mean specifically his role in the offense. And and this is my problem with the Warriors once Kevin Durant got there, is individually, no one is relied upon on a night-by-night basis. It might be Steph and Clay tonight. It might be Kevin Clay tonight. It might be Steph and Kev tonight. Maybe it's a night where, Kevin Durant's so hot in the first quarter, they basically blow him out. People don't even play halfway through the third quarter. Right?
Because you know what's funny is that Kevin Durant is talking about how LeBron's impact on his teammates. I think you got to look at Durant's impact on his teammates. I
don't think it's Durant's specific impact. What I think it is that team was not constructed to have Kevin Durant.
To have a guy like Kevin Durant, to have a ball dominant guy.
Right. And he was added on to that team. And what happened as a result is everything else just gets reduced because it's just getting more and more evenly distributed. And this is his words, actually. He basically said when you're in one situation, you're getting this amount of shots. I think the number he said was something like 17 is what they're getting now. He's like, and then when somebody comes in, that 17 might go to 13, but out of that 13, these, instead of having 7 great shots, 2 good shots, and 3 bad shots, now you're going to have more great shots. The problem is that math doesn't work for actual basketball players. Some people get worse when they get more shot attempts. Some people get worse when they get less shot attempts.
Yeah.
Some people need to be hot. Some people need to be able to get into a rhythm. And once you reduce those attempts to a certain point, like Clay, there's going to be games where Clay gets 11 shots, never got into rhythm, didn't need to get into rhythm to win. And that's the key, because that's when it can start to happen for games at a stretch, and you can actually start to get cold. I think with Draymond, he became such an ancillary piece to their offense that he's just gone years without having to hit threes. And now he can't.
I mean, he was always he was never on, Steph and Clay's level, obviously, but he was at least a guy who could make you pay if you left him open. Now it's the shot you want them to take. It's the shot you need them to take. I mean, if a guy's making 39% of his threes, that's not a guy you want to continue to leave open. That's just not.
Of course.
That's not. But when as it has continued to dip, and now his 3 attempts are down, and you can clearly see they're not down because he's not getting any looks. It's just that he doesn't have any confidence in making any of these looks. And I think that he has grown, because of the type of guy he is, I think he has grown increasingly more insecure about his failures.
Yes.
And because of how he is, that has caused him to be more of even more belligerent than he normally would be.
Because it's humiliating.
Because it's humiliating, and it taps into his insecurity. So I feel some type of way about the long, skinny kid who's clearly the best player on this team, but I can't make an open 3.
Right.
So he's giving me the ball when they double team him, or when they come to try to take the ball out of his hand, and they're doubling off me now because I'm the only one out here that can't make a shot, and the center is in their hole, so they can't leave. You can't leave him. So they're leaving me because we're playing 4 out, 1 in, and I'm the one out. I'm one of the 4 out, and I can't make my shot, and I'm feeling some type of way about that. And that's why I think that, really, honestly, and this segment was really more about the Lakers. We started talking about the Warriors. I think that Draymond's failures, the issues between him and KD are going to lead to a situation where it's going to have to be him, KD, or Draymond for next season moving on. Honestly,
if they lose Draymond and keep KD, they might be able to keep Cousins. And if that works out, they'll be fine. Either way, they're going to be fine. I'm not with this group of people that thinks because Kevin's leaving that the Steph Curry era is over. Steph Curry I think he's top 3 player in the league. And I think people underestimate just how great he is because he's unselfish. Same thing's kind of happening with Westbrook. He's literally handing the ball to Paul George throughout many moments in the game, and people are like, maybe he's falling off, and it's like, see, this is why we get, you know what I'm saying? It's why people shoot all the time, because the moment you stop and you have 2 bad games in a row, all of a sudden I can't play anymore, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And Steph Curry has seen some of that. People forget this guy is a 2-time MVP, totally deserving. He was leading the league easily. And I think once he's more relied upon, we will be like, oh no, they're still one of the top teams in the league. It'll just be competitive.
Well, I think that with Steph, the thing about Steph is Steph's game is predicated on one particular aspect of the game, and it's easier. Like it's as simple as, if Steph's shot's not falling that evening, then he's not a great player that day. For the most part,
I disagree with you.
If Steph's shot isn't falling, I'm not saying he's not a good player, but he's not a great player.
I mean, you can say that about almost any offensive player.
No.
Any perimeter offensive player, like who's a perimeter-oriented player that if their shot's not falling at all, they're not.
I'm not. When I say shot, I'm talking about the long-range shot, the 3. If Steph is not making shots from distance for that particular game, he's not a great player.
I don't necessarily agree with that. Because the thing is, it goes back to the Draymond thing. When Steph starts missing, people don't all of a sudden start saying, well, I'm just going to let him shoot another one.
No, definitely
they're afraid he's going to get hot.
But here's the thing. If they're not going in, then they're not a bucket. There's an increased chance
Steph
that
is also a great passer, an above-average defender, and an excellent ball handler.
I disagree. He's above average.
He is above average. I don't think he's a quote-unquote
he's not an above average
defender. He's above average. If you really watch Steph play, he has extraordinarily quick hands, a lot of intelligence, and he gives effort, which makes him above average.
I would say
it doesn't make him good.
I say he's an average defender.
All right, we can leave that debate where it is. I think he's slightly above average, but that's splitting hairs. Either way, he's not a minus on defense, and he's a great passer. Overall, great decision maker, which is not just passing; it's other things. He's a great screener. something he doesn't get credit for.
I do think he's a great screener. I do think he's a great screener.
And he's a great finisher. Hold on, he's a great finisher at the rim. And
he's an outstanding finisher at the rim. But all of that you said from a scoring standpoint is predicated and set up on his ability to make the shot from distance.
But because the opponent believes he can make the shot from the distance, they still play him as if he can, which still creates the space. The issue with Draymond is they don't believe he could shoot, and it's killing the space.
Well, I mean, it'll never be that bad for Steph. It'll never be that. I mean, that's like a whole nother end of the spectrum. Well, so that's what I'm saying. Like Draymond can go from being an above average player to an average player or maybe a below average player because he's not making his shot. Steph Curry goes from being oh my God, I've never seen a guy like this talent when he's making his shot to a guy who's a really good guard when he's not making his shot.
Steph Curry on a night where he shoots 30% from three is still better than most players at his position.
I would say if Steph's not making his three, if Steph is making 30% of his threes, I'd say he's a top 10 or 11 guy.
Which is the crazy thing is that Steph shoots so well that shooting bad for him is a completely different definition.
It is.
Which is kind of the point because Steph has had 3 for 11 nights where they have destroyed people, and he was a big reason they have destroyed people. And that's why I'm disagreeing because the proof is really in the pudding. His winning record in the last 5 years, I guess it is insane. And he hasn't shot great every single night.
I'm not saying that Steph is the greatest shooter I've ever seen. He's the greatest shooter that ever lived, in my opinion. I don't think there's anybody ever who has played the game who has been as an efficient of a shooter in as many different situations. Like you got guys who are great outside shooters. You got guys who are good mid-range shooters. You got guys who are good spot-up shooters, guys who are great shooters off the dribble. He can do all of that. He does all of it at an elite level. All of it. Every type of way you can put the ball in the basket besides dunking, he does it at an elite level, right? So I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that from when he's not hot from three or he's not at his average. So I won't even say hot because hot for him is 9 out of 10. Right. But I'm saying when he's not making 4 out of 9 or 4 out of 8, if he doesn't shoot at that level, he drops off some. And
that's literally the definition of drop off.
But I'm saying he doesn't drop off to the point where he sucks now and he's not helping your team at all. But he goes from being a superstar to being a guy who's just a good player on the floor. And I think that's the difference between some other guys who are more physically gifted and physically dominant. Russell Westbrook can still be, oh my God, force on the floor. Even when he's shooting bad, because he shoots bad far more often than Steph does.
Just the fact that he rebounds it and dunks on you before your guys even realize the ball is out is always a problem.
And that's my
agree
point.
with you in principle, but my thing about it with this discussion is Steph, people always fear his shot, which creates the spacing to allow him to do those things. The shot going in is usually what leads to, man, we were up 20 and all of a sudden we're down 6 and we were only 2 minutes from the quarter ending. That's what that creates. And that's what makes the team so difficult to defeat. When Steph is cold, it just makes them almost fair.
But exactly. So essentially, you just supported exactly what I'm saying, right?
No.
So it is because you said it makes them almost fair, which now makes, because when he's making the shots, it's unfair. You can't beat him. For the most part, you have no shot.
Right.
But when he's not making them, it's like, oh, we got a shot because that didn't just go in.
When Steph's not making them, he's still shooting better than most people, which is my point. And he's still doing all those other things very, very, very well.
He is, and I don't disagree with that. But what I'm saying is it still takes him down a level to the point where he's far more human because the other things, the other aspects of his game that he's good at, he can't get to them as well as other people can get to the other parts of their game. And it's all about the physical aspects of it. It's all about physicality. And that's where it goes from being a skill to an actual sport.
I'll put it this way.
Matter.
Steph Curry is usually Steph Curry. And when he's not shooting either as much or as well, he basically just turns into Steve Nash. but he doesn't handle the ball as much because his team is so talented. My point is, if they lose parts, because we're talking about Steph Curry in a world without Kevin Durant and or Draymond Green, I think that Steve Nash part of him will grow more. He's just not using it as much because they have the luxury of not having a high usage on Steph Curry. But from a pure talent perspective, I think his handle is elite. His passing intelligence is elite. His off-ball play as a screen setter and as a threat and a floor spreader, even without the actual shot going in, is elite because of how they play him. And his free throw shooting is elite. And his ability to finish it at the basket is elite. So we're talking about, with all those things being as they are, he's still an all-star point guard when he's shooting 30%. But it's just the usage which is deceptive.
If Steph shot 30% from three, he's not at all. If for a season. So I mean,
that's not Steph though.
But that's the picture you just painted.
No, it's because that changes, because the thing is, if Steph shoots for 30% from three for 2 games in a row, your expectation is he's about to blast you.
I understand.
If he shot that for a season, your expectation is, oh, maybe Steph Curry's lost it, which is different.
But that's not what I'm really saying. What I thought we were doing was evaluating Steph overall in terms of what his skill set is, and because what I'm saying is, if you take away the outstanding 3-point shooting and you make it just regular 3-point shooting, that's essentially my point. If you take away that, and I understand what you're saying because if it's just in a vacuum, if it's just for a small period of time, we're talking about small sample size of bad shooting, it doesn't really affect the way he's defended, because he's still Steph, and it's almost like a deep threat in the NFL, right?
Right. If he's still getting a double team, he's still doing his job.
He's still opening up everything for everybody else. But here's the thing: if he's going deep and the quarterback is throwing him the ball, and he had a wide open touchdown and he drops it wide open, and he beat his man the same way he normally would beat his man, but he drops it. When that happens, it affects the team that he plays on. It affects the likelihood of winning that game. He still opened up everybody. He opened up the seams for the tight end. He opened up the flats for the running back. He opened up the slant route for the wide receiver on the other side of the field. He did all of that, but he didn't catch this pass that he normally would catch. So it affects how good or how impacting he is for that particular game, because he had an opportunity to do what he normally does. And
this is where the crux of our argument comes in, because the thing is, every superstar has ups and downs. So we're not comparing him against a field that is perfectly consistent. And when we talk about him coming down, we're talking about him coming down to a level where he's probably at league average if he shoots bad.
Yeah. If he shoots bad, if Steph shoots down to league average for him, he's like,
so what I'm saying, 37%. If guys miss shots, clearly that means that some productivity is gone. And if you want to define that as that productivity by saying, well, he was less productive, so he was worse, well, that's the definition of it. So that has to be true. But to say that he's not great, for me, the circumstances would have to be that he's not getting credit for the shooting. So they're playing him differently, so he's not able to do other things. And my backup for this is really that Steph Curry has shot the 3-4-11 game, and they have blown people out. And not that he shoots poorly often, but this has happened often within that context. So I don't think he needs to be hot from three to be effective. But the fact of the matter is, he's such a threat from three that he will probably get hot from three at some point. And honestly, the crazy thing is, because of the other things that he does well, he gets some 3-point shots that the best 3-point shooter in history should never get. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes he's standing wide open in the corner, but you look at the whole play, it's because of how he set the screen and fooled his guy and all this other stuff. And so, I don't know. I think Steph is more than just a 3-pointer by enough of a margin that he's still an all-star in games where he doesn't shoot well. And when his usage rate goes up, I think he'll have more assists and free throws as necessary, and Golden State will still be an incredible, incredible threat, even if Draymond is completely washed and KD leaves. That having been said, we should hop on the Lakers before we change topics real quick.
Yes. Like originally my question was, is this something that should we overreact over this, or should we react to this and say, hey, this says something about who Golden State is long-term and who the Lakers are long-term? Do we feel and the Lakers' ability to compete, not only to compete, to beat the Warriors in their own building? Granted, it's a regular season game. Do we look at that as evidence maybe that the Lakers don't even really need to make any of these trades that we're hearing discussed mid-season? Or should they just ride out the maturation of LeBron's supporting cast?
No, I think they still have to make moves. In fact, I would actually go the other direction. I think their issue is they have swung and missed. Well, you could argue that they swung and missed on 100% of their high draft picks, except for the guy who they let go, Julius Randle, who is roughly about what you would expect the productivity. What was he drafted? 7th, I think.
Something like that, 5th or 7th.
Now, while there are some obvious all-time greats drafted at 7 and below, usually once you get to 7, you're totally cool with a guy who's just really, really productive, if that's how it goes. He is, and at his size, he is what they thought he would be. So, and they let him go for some reason. Maybe he just didn't fit with LeBron. I don't know. Every other player is bust-ish, right? The distance between Lonzo Ball and De'Aaron Fox is massive. I mean, the argument can be made that Lonzo Ball is one of the worst players in his draft class in terms of the top end of it and guards overall.
Well, you gotta remember, the guy that went number what?
Well, Markel?
Yeah. So
I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
But I said one of.
Yeah. It was So.
But you look at everybody else, they're much happier with that. And not that he's a bad player, but one of the discussions we were constantly having was like Frank Ntilikina, and I've been saying consistently, at their ages and development, and I'm looking at the mechanics of everything, my expectation of Frank Ntilikina is hopefully he can be an excellent defensive backup point guard who can hit the 3 consistently and play the pick and roll at a solid level.
I think that's pretty much what I think it's been, even though I know he's still young, I think it's kind of proven that that's probably what his ceiling is.
I wouldn't put a ceiling on him because he's literally still growing. So I don't know. And he's a hard worker. So players that young, I don't put a ceiling on them. I mean, Moutier looked like an absolute bust, and now he averaged 20 points for the entire month of December.
See, I never thought he looked like a bust.
But he literally did look like a bust. But he was a bust. Like,
because he had flashes, really strong flashes in Denver, and then he fell out of favor with the coaching staff, and then so he's you could see the production drop then. I have yet to see any of those kinds of long-term flashes from Frank.
Frank's super young, and he has shown flash. But point being, this ain't about Frank Ntilikina. Point being, what I said was Frank is drafted in a place where he's not ever going to get a big contract from us. He's not expected to be a big contract from us, but we need to draft defense at some point. And if we drafted a defensive role player, that's great. The problem with Lonzo Ball is that he's drafted to be the starter, the franchise point guard. And so you're never going to pay him that mid-contract comfortably. That's not what you want at number 2. That's not what you were looking for from his skill set. You were looking for him to change the culture of your organization. And while I don't think he's a terrible NBA player, he's definitely not what you want from a second-round draft pick. Brandon Ingram, out of all of the young guys, he's the one who fits the least in with LeBron because he's a guy who needs the ball and he can't hit the 3. He needs to be somewhere else where his usage can go up and he can develop and grow in that group. I also don't think he's a terrible player, but he doesn't look like he's going to flourish into a superstar that can play with LeBron. Kyle Kuzma, excellent number 3 guy, looks like what he is. Josh Hart, excellent rotation shooter guy, but
and a really good and a really strong defender.
Getting better on that end. That's great. He's a young guy, so we look to see improvements from that. But the thing that we got from the Lakers was really that the veterans that people had questions about, Lance, Rondo, even later on Tyson Chandler. I know JaVale's hurt. We've seen him before, though. Those guys, Magic and LeBron, were right. Having playmakers and defenders and guys with grit and experience is good for LeBron, is good for the Lakers. We can take that away. But from the young talent perspective, they could take every player under the age of 25 on that team and ship them out of town if they can get somebody better. And I don't just mean Anthony Davis. I mean anybody good. Anybody good. And completely rebuild it. So the young players, nothing from the young players. Who cares? There's not a young player on that roster that I wouldn't give a who cares to.
Kuzma's the only one that I would. Kuzma's the only one that I would consider you'd have it if it's not Anthony Davis. I'm not including him in a deal.
Klay Thompson.
If it's not Anthony Davis, I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
Boy.
Because the thing about Kuzma is, I think Kuzma is one of those rare role player type players who it's Lamar Odom-ish to me. Not saying his game is like Lamar Odom, but it's Lamar Odom-ish in the fact that he's an extremely high level, versatile player who is fine not being the star.
Yeah, he's like an all-star light.
He's an all-star light guy. Yeah. And that guy fits with whoever your number 1 is all the time, no matter what it does. And he's so young. And because of that, I like I said, it'd have to be Anthony Davis. And Klay Thompson's amazing. Klay Thompson's an outstanding.
I would definitely get rid of Kuzma for Klay. I mean, I like Kuzma. I said, Kuzma is the one guy that I think is clearly we got to keep him on the roster.
But I would have chosen Randall over Ingram.
I am inclined to agree with you because Randall was turning into a monster.
And and Randall is a dude that I know what you are.
Yeah.
I know what you are. You are since we're using the term light, you're Chris Webber light. That's what you are. That and I know that's what you are, and every team can use that guy. You know what I mean? Every team can use the hustler, rebounder, finisher.
Yeah, I look at him more in the Paul Millsap role, but yeah,
I don't. Only reason I would say that only reason I don't give him that because I don't see him ever being able to expand the. I don't see him ever being able to expand the range the way Paul Millsap did. And he's bigger than Paul Millsap. And I think he's more of a traditional big than Paul Millsap. Paul Millsap's kind of like Paul Millsap's about 6'7", 6'7.5". He's about 6'7". They say 6'8" or 6'9", but he's about 6'7", 6'7.5". He's a smaller power forward. And I think that Randall's more of a legit traditional power forward, but he's an athletic traditional power forward. He's far more athletic than Paul Millsap. So that's why I lean more towards Chris Webber-ish, but not quite at that level, but not far off because Randall's production is pretty. Randall's the only one pushing. Here it is. Cue it up. Randall's the only one pushing my guy Derrick Rose for the 6th man of the year.
Oh, we're not gonna do that.
I had to, but it was relevant. It was relevant. We're
not gonna do that.
We talked about 6th man. We talked about 6th man.
You can promise the people if you want to. We could argue about the 6th man next show.
But
they want to tune in for that.
They're the 2 guys running for 6th man right now.
If you want to have that discussion, we can have that next time. We ain't gonna do that though.
I was just saying. I'm going in. All right, so we're shifting gears. We're still talking basketball, but we were talking about some of the teams at the top of the standings. Now we're going to talk about some of the teams, or not even the teams, the options for the teams that are and the bottom, you know. So we got several tank type campaigns going on. I heard not trying for Zion.
Which is a great one.
Yeah. So, but I think my question is, it does appear as though Duke's Zion Williamson has emerged as the most coveted draft prospect coming up for this offseason. But I have still some questions, right? Would you rather have Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, or Bol? I think those three guys are the three that are most considered to be the top three prospects in college. But clearly somebody else can emerge between now and April. But I think right now those three are the ones. I mean, Rui Hachimura from Gonzaga is probably in the conversation there too. But I feel confident with Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, and Bol as being the three. So I don't know, which one would you rather have?
My mind says Zion is such a freak, and he's such a guy that's hard to compare to people because he's a unique athlete, that you go for that if you have the number one pick. But my heart says RJ Barrett is a better basketball player that would fit the NBA game. He can dribble, pass, shoot. With 6'7", just looks like he can play all three positions. Aggressive, good finishing. I mean, just athletic, like everything. You know what I mean? Like RJ Barrett is one of the most complete college basketball players I've ever seen. I know there's some questions about his inefficiency, but he's a college student, so you know, really, you know what I mean? Like I don't expect him to be a finished. He's a freshman. I don't expect him to be a finished product, but as a college freshman, like RJ Barrett is so ridiculous as a college freshman. Like I would pick RJ Barrett, even though I do think Zion is better at other things than being athletic in the capacity that people don't give him a lot of credit for because he's such an outstanding dunker. He has a good feel for finishing around the basket.
Yes.
He has a decent handle. My problem with his handle, though, is he has a full court handle, not a half court handle.
Yes, exactly.
And so my fear, so I don't want to I'm not dismissing Zion because anybody who picks him, I totally get it. My fear with Zion is right now, we saw a game in Ben Simmons where they just did not play him. And Ben Simmons is excellent at getting to the basket. Excellent. Great ball handle, right? Great finisher around the basket. And at the end of games, they just stand back and watch him. Now, Zion is theoretically a better shooter than Ben because Ben is like I'm not shooting kind of guy. But I don't think he's Giannis. See, Giannis, it don't matter how you play Giannis. Y'all can all stand under the basket, all y'all getting dunked on. Zion's just not tall enough for that. And we're seeing it even in college where sometimes he'll get into that high traffic situation where it's just an ugly shot attempt. And I'm thinking, man, if those guys were all 4 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier like they are in the NBA, that's not going to fly. It's not that I don't think he'll be an effective player, but when you're drafting this high, I want a guy that I'm relying on in the fourth quarter, not playing around in the fourth quarter. And I have not been given reason to believe that Zion will be a guy in the fourth quarter I can give the ball to. Out of all of the guys you mentioned, RJ Barrett is probably by far the one I would want to give the ball in the fourth quarter in an NBA game.
I really, truly, deep in my soul, hate to agree. Yeah, it hurts. Pain very much. But I would agree. When you draft a guy number one, you don't draft a spectacular dunking role player. And that is what Zion appears to be to me. He appears to be one of the most freakishly talented athletes whose height limitations and traditional basketball skill limitations confine him to being a super role player. And I don't think that you can draft a guy like that, number one. The other thing that worries me is for a 6'6", 280-pound kid to depend so much on his elite level athleticism that I wonder how long your shelf life is. Because injuries can happen to anybody, but you wonder, what does it look like when Zion Williamson at 6'6", 280 pounds with a power forward's game loses a step? He's not a great three-point shooter. I don't know that he ever will be a great one, but I'm not sure that Charles Barkley in today's game, with the skill set he had, could be anywhere close to what he was when he played, just because of the way the game is played now, right? Charles Barkley made himself into being a decent three-point shooter. Probably in today's era, he could make himself a little bit better.
Yeah.
But the thing of it is his bring up was very slow. His release was slow overall. He didn't shoot the three as if it was the shot he wanted to take. He needed to get to the basket. And because of his amazing gifts, which Zion's game is different. Zion has, like, people don't realize early in Barkley's career, he had ridiculous bounce.
Oh, yeah.
Ridiculous bounce. But it still is not compared to the way that Zion runs.
He wasn't the natural athlete that Zion was.
Yeah, Zion runs. And
Charles will even tell you he worked on his vertical.
Yeah.
That was something that he was obviously a great athlete, but he wasn't a world class. Like Zion, he dunked out the crib.
Yeah, Zion could probably be an Olympic level athlete in another.
Yeah.
The
amount of power it takes to send 300 pounds into the air
that high
at his age,
that high,
insane.
And we're not talking about just barely dunking.
No,
we're talking about
it's insane.
Yes.
He's coming down on the rim. He's got LeBron hops.
Yes,
he's got young LeBron hops.
It's insane.
It's so crazy that he does a normal dunk and it's still something to see.
Yes.
So here's my thing. I don't worry about his injury history, because sometimes with a guy like Zion, that build, that athleticism, sometimes they just come injury proof. Right?
LeBron.
Right. And knock on wood. And so, although I guess LeBron's played so long that
LeBron's already passed it.
He's already passed it.
If he was to tear, God forbid, tear something tomorrow,
it don't count.
It don't count because he's already proven it.
That's how I feel about Anderson Silva, but we ain't gonna talk about that. But, I'm glad that's on record though. But so with Zion, I don't worry too much about that aspect of it. It's really the fact that in today's game, let's talk about his shooting for a second. Anybody can improve their shooting. However, the mechanics at the free throw line usually indicate how likely it is you're going to be a much better shooter. You look at Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was actually an excellent overall shooter, but in his era, shooting the three at a high clip was not a highly valued skill in a ball handler.
No.
So
there's no doubt in my mind. Michael in today's game would be a 38% three-point shooter.
100%. Excellent three-point shooter. He would be in today's game. No doubt about it, because all of the evidence points to that.
He'd average 40.
Yeah, because honestly, his three-pointer was better than it needed to be for how great he was at getting to the basket, getting free throws, dunking on you, finishing layups in traffic, and shooting out of the post. He didn't need a free throw because he was better at those things than DeMar DeRozan is. And DeMar DeRozan doesn't do
it. DeMar DeRozan is averaging 26, 27 points a game last year, and he can't shoot from distance.
Right.
Not even as good as Mike.
And Mike in an era that didn't need the three, shot better at the three. But this ain't about Mike, this is about Zion. And the problem with Zion is that his mechanics don't look good right now. So he's going to have to build a jumper because he doesn't have a quick flowing release that just needs to be tweaked. We discussed Frank Ntilikina earlier. Frank's form looks good. Same thing with Kevin Knox. His form looked good. So he was shooting very cold when the season started, but you expect it just looks like this guy can shoot. And now he's shooting great. He's shooting almost, I think, 40% for the month or something like that. So, Zion is the opposite. Even when a shot goes in, you're like, yeah, but
I don't know if you're going to hit the next one.
Yeah. Keep convincing me.
Right.
So I don't know how solvable that is. And without a shot, it's hard to say, man, I don't know if you put it great. I think role player might be harsh, but it might.
But I said super role player.
But but the thing is, you talk about the number 1, number 2 draft pick.
Exactly.
It might be harsh, but it also might be true.
Yes.
Because there's a reality, and if this goes wrong, people are going to pull up this footage and call me crazy.
Yes.
But right now, while they are freshmen, if Cam Reddish gave his team closer to the ceiling of what they expected from him, more than Zion did, I wouldn't be surprised. Now, that's not me saying Cam Reddish will be a better NBA player. But if they brought Cam in to hit shots and D up and play overall intelligently and fill his role, Cam Reddish might do that even better than you expect him to do. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Zion, you're pulling him in saying, you're a freak, you're a monster, you're going to change our franchise. The fall from that is much farther, especially if you can't shoot. And we've already said the guy can defend. He shows effort on defense, intelligent kid.
He plays hard.
Great attitude, plays hard, good instincts around the rim in addition to the athleticism. So we're not just thinking that he's a dunker. The fact of the matter is he's short and he can't shoot, and that's terrifying.
You know who the comp that comes to my mind for him is Kenneth Faried.
I can understand how you would say that, although the thing is, I don't make that comparison because Zion, as a guy with the ball in his hands, just looks like a much better offensive player than Kenneth Faried.
He has much better footwork.
It's not just the footwork, it's everything, right? We've talked about how there's the invisible part that we haven't really calculated yet to athleticism.
Yeah.
Same thing with NBA skill. Zion has, I don't like using these words, but just his feel, his rhythm, his seeing of the lanes. Like him and Kenneth Faried see the game differently. Even when you're only talking about here's the ball, go dunk. They just see it differently. And that matters because everybody with good athleticism isn't a good in-game dunker. Zion sees the spaces for those opportunities to make plays at the basket. His hop step is ridiculous. Just his hop step.
Oh, this is it.
If you just gave Kenneth Faried the hop step, he'd earn $5 more million a year.
The fact that this kid can split double teams with this hop step that he uses is crazy. Like he can be going left and he'll gather going right on the hop step at the same time. So he's like going left, hop step to the right through a double team, and then the next hop is the explosion for the
crazy.
Dunk.
I mean, it's crazy. It's a Zion step.
Yes.
Like he does it so fast and so accurately. That's the other thing. There's an accuracy to that, right? To where you go, to seeing those spaces. It's a game of inches at that point when you're going to the rim and everybody's moving that quickly. And he's getting to that spot faster than everybody. So I wouldn't compare him to Faried because even if you were to say that their offensive skills from a fundamental standpoint were similar, his instincts are so much better than Kenneth Faried's. I would never expect Kenneth Faried to take the ball from half court, run into the middle of the lane, make a move, and dunk on people on a consistent basis. But Zion I expect that from Zion. My problem is that enough? I don't know what to put around that.
Can he do that on the next level?
In the half court, which is my question. It's actually two questions. One, can he do it in the half court? Which is a big issue because his handle, I don't think, is a good half-court handle at this point. It's a good full-court handle. But in the half-court, NBA defense, I don't know. You know what I mean? Maybe. He's young. Maybe. He's a kid. He's a kid. He can develop.
The reason why I say Kenneth Faried is because I don't know. And I guess if you draft a number 1 or number 2, I guess you give him this opportunity. But I don't know if a coach that he gets with in the NBA is going to give him the freedom and the autonomy to do some of the things that he's been able to do at Duke, grabbing rebounds, going full court, that sort of thing. Are they going to give him that freedom?
It's for the same reason Kobe Bryant got that gigantic contract late in his career. Ticket prices. Zion Williamson, any of these bad teams in the league, with the exception of New York, he is going to change how much times they sell out.
Yeah, I mean, because New York's going to sell out anyway. But
I could start for point guard in New York and that still sell out.
Right. But if Zion is in New York, oh my God, I mean, the Knicks are going to be on ESPN 32 times.
Here's the problem, though. If he starts in New York, where do we put him?
To me, I think that he is your small forward. I mean, if you put Porzingis in the middle, I think then he's a 4. And honestly, I can strongly consider playing 5 out.
And that makes sense.
I strongly consider playing 5 out like the Bucks.
I'm not saying it isn't, but right now at this moment in time, I am not convinced that Zion Williamson's ceiling is higher than Kevin Knox's. Right now, I don't know. I'm saying I do.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. But now we didn't talk anything at all about Bo.
We did,
and it's funny because Bo is compared quite often to Kristaps Porzingis.
Yes,
because the games are similar, the sizes are similar. It's just very difficult for me to say that I would take him number 1.
Why is that, B?
I've seen him do some amazing things on the floor. I'm talking about, I saw him get tripped up to fall to the ground on defense, give the effort to get back to his feet. And in the process of getting back to his feet, he wasn't even fully standing yet, but he gets back up to contest the shot, to block the shot on a jump shot, gets the ball going the other way, and it turns into a transition opportunity. So, I mean, and he can legit shoot from range with some accuracy. The shot blocking is crazy, but what I wonder with him is he's a kid now, right? And he's 7'2", 235 or 245 or something like that now. As a grown man, he's going to be like 270. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, his dad was pretty skinny.
Yeah, but he already weighs more than his dad about now.
Yeah, but that ain't hard. I mean,
right. But I'm saying, like, you got to think that he's going to gain 25, 30 pounds of grown man muscle.
I don't know, because Kevin Garnett.
He's a different dude, though. He's like he's got the thin gene. Like, so really.
Have you seen his dad? He got the thin gene.
Yeah. Bo might have it too. But I'm just looking at the fact that he's a little heavier already. I think that he's a little heavier already.
He's slim, but he's very tall. He's slim because that's pretty small for that height. And you honestly, I don't think the issue is him getting big. I think the issue is same with Porzingis. Lower extremity injuries are a serious concern at that height.
Yes.
I think Porzingis has done pretty good so far. There's a big difference with Porzingis and Bol in that Porzingis, having played professional ball, is a very high IQ basketball player coming into the league. Mm-hmm. And that was my point with him versus Cat. Well, everybody was like, Cat's way better. I was like, way better? I don't know. Maybe he's marginally better. I'm not sure. But the big thing for me is that Porzingis clearly knows what he's doing. Just literally watch him go down court, come up and set a screen. Watch Cat go down court, come up and set a screen. Cat looks more lost. He wastes more time. He wastes more space. He doesn't do it properly. Now, Cat's getting better with that stuff as time goes on, but Porzingis had that out the gate, and everybody doesn't get that. And so I don't think it's fair to compare Bol because in that respect, they are on different planets. You know what I'm saying? So, and I think that heavily factors into those careless plays too. You know, some guys get hurt from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Bol is kind of that all over the place thing. Like we talked about Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis looked like he going to get hurt on a good 17% of the plays he's in. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you're like, whoa, I thought he pulled something doing that. I mean, did he like strain his shoulder dunking the ball by himself? Like he just moved funny. And when you talk about Move Funny, Ball might be auditioning for the Move Funny Hall of Fame already. He like
know.
all NCAA Move Funny. And I don't trust it, man. I don't trust it. That's why I'm looking at Cam Reddish. You look like an NBA player.
Yeah. Oh, Cam Reddish is an NBA player.
Yeah. Huey,
Cam Reddish is going to have a solid NBA career.
We should talk about Huey real quick. The problem with Huey is that Huey is Japanese. Yeah. And he didn't speak any English. And so he still has that foreign kid problem of spending a lot of time here, not knowing what his coaches are telling him, taking a long time to adapt to the culture. So right now with Huey, there's an element of his game similar to Antetokounmpo, who some people compare him to. Totally unfair comparison.
Yeah, I don't think that's right.
Well, at this point in their career, it's not fair. But with Huey, I think you have to look at how that transition happens before you can fairly evaluate him and what his ceiling will be. Because I think Huey's instincts are a little muddled by the culture adaptation that is still happening with him. Sometimes, and
I think you could kind of say the same thing with Antetokounmpo when he first came in.
Yes, which is why I say now the comparison isn't fair, even though people are making it now. But it's fair to bring him up in the sense that he also had that transition.
Yeah, I don't think that Hachimura is the same freakish athlete that Antetokounmpo is. No, he's a great athlete, but not like that.
We on the show we discussed the hands. He ain't got the hands, man.
Yeah,
Antetokounmpo got them crazy.
And I'm not sure if you pronounce his name Huey or Louis because he calls himself Lewis.
Okay, so here's the thing. In Japan, the L's and the R's are the same.
Okay.
And it makes a sound that we don't make in America.
Okay.
So when they say their name, it's in between a lot of our letters. So any name that starts with an R can be substituted for a name that starts with an L when you Americanize it or Western.
There you go. Your Japanese lesson for today.
I think his name would be pronounced Louis, which is not something we would ever say. We would never say Louis. It's a sound that combines the rolled R, the L, and the H all together.
Well, I'm very glad you expounded upon that.
Hey, happy to help.
I'm asking, do you think that the Mavericks should deal Dennis Smith Jr.?
This is an interesting conversation. As a Knicks fan, we always face questions of should we have drafted Dennis Smith Jr. over Frank? And my answer to that was always, well, Dennis Smith Jr. seems to have a higher ceiling, and I realize he's much more exciting. However, a highly athletic point guard who's a little bit undersized isn't a dynamite shooter, and you could pretty much call a bad playmaker, is not necessarily something I want on my team. So even if Frank is a lesser player, I would rather have a defensive role player who hits open shots than a higher usage, inefficient, athletic guy going forward. That's just me, because I don't see Dennis Smith Jr. turning into Russell Westbrook or John Wall, and he doesn't have the skills to be Kyrie Irving or Dame. So that having been said, in Dallas's position, they see this guy every day over the past few years. Oh, as a caveat, and this goes for anytime you guys watch the show, know that my opinion on young point guards is they need 4 to 5 years before you know what they are. So they can look really, really good and not turn out so great. They can look really, really bad and turn out much better than you thought. So keep this in mind. But you still have to make decisions because they might be turning the corner right as their contract is about to come up. They might be, everybody thinks they're going to turn into something and you think they're not. And that goes to where the Dallas Mavericks might be. Everybody thinks Dennis Smith Jr. is going to turn into Russell Westbrook with a slightly better jumper and maybe less passing. That's what most people think, right? It's going to be this high-flying guy, dunking on people all the time, running up and down the floor. But I don't know if that's the case. And I think Dallas doesn't know if that's the case. And if everybody else thinks that, that means his trade value is as high as it's going to be. because playing next to what appears to be the superior player in Luka Doncic, and more importantly, the superior point guard in Luka Doncic, even though he's technically not playing that position, that allows you to do is to get a George Hill, Pat Beverly 3-and-D guy at the 1 and use Luka as your primary ball handler, and have him as your main decision maker going forward. So do I think they should? I can't say should because I'm not there seeing what they see every day. But I do think it's very possible that this is the best possible time to trade him because he might the warts might show more and lower his value in the future. Whereas right now, you might get exactly the player that you want for Dennis Smith Jr. And people will say you got robbed, and it'll turn out it was the other way around a few years down the line. Or maybe it'll be good for both teams.
Yeah, I think that they should definitely move him. I think that a lot of times people look at team building almost the way they look at team building is if they were playing like NBA 2K, right? So in their minds, they say, well, you just get a bunch of good players. You get 5 good players and you have a good team. That's just how it goes. And if this guy's not better than this guy, then why would you trade him for him? But that's not the way you build a team. That's not a way you build a lineup. Guys have to fit. And if the Mavericks can move Dennis Smith Jr. to a squad where they are able to get who is technically man for man, maybe a lesser shooting guard than Dennis Smith Jr. is, a point guard or a combo guard or whatever, but that guy fits better with Luka Doncic, then that's the right deal. Or if you're able to get assets or draft assets or what have you, or you're able to get some assets that allow you to put together another deal to get that kind of a guy, then that's fine. Or if you already have a 2 guard on the bench who plays well with Luka Doncic, then that's the way you build a team. So while I believe in Dennis Smith Jr. as a player, I do worry about injuries because he's had a torn ACL already in his career and in his college career. I've seen firsthand what happens with athletic point guards around his size who play, the style of game that he plays. He doesn't seem to put quite as much torque on his lower body as Derek did, but he does it. You can look at him and you can kind of get a little Derek flashback every once in a while, and that can scare you, because you're wondering. And then he's already torn his ACL. You know what I mean? So that part of it definitely factors in. So that actually leads into what you were talking about letting him play long. The longer you let him stay with you, the more chance it is that he hurts his trade value. So you don't want to wait until he sucks throughout this season. And then now people start to have doubts. And now, say, for instance, the pool of suitors were this big. Mm-hmm. And now he starts to play poorly. And then the pool comes to this big. And the only people that are left are the people who really, really loved him out of college and just believe that he just needs another shot and just give me an opportunity to get him in this particular culture. And we can get him back to what he was or what he could have been. Then now that's when you start ending up getting much less back in return. And now you're not in there's not a bidding war for him. There's only 2 people that'll take him type of a situation. And I don't think you want that. So while he's still very young, still on his rookie deal, so he's controllable for, I think this is the second year of the rookie deal. So next year he's guaranteed. And then the year after that, he's guaranteed under as long as you pick up the team option. And then there's the qualifying offer because he will become a restricted free agent. So you got a good amount of time to evaluate him. And people may forget last year he averaged almost 16 points a game, as a rookie. And he averaged like 5 assists a game, like 3.5, 4 rebounds. This year the numbers have dropped playing next to Doncic.
And also if you watched him play last year, while he did have spikes of like, oh wow, he looks like a good player, most of it was not winning basketball. Yeah, projected. Like there's a lot of times guys get super empty numbers And I think he was in such a situation where he had I think those numbers were pretty empty.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call them empty, but you can't just say, oh, well, he averaged this and then that's the end of it. That's the end all be all. But he definitely had games and he definitely had situations where you're like, oh, okay, this kid is, yeah. I mean, because the thing you got to do is you got to look at some of his best games, right? And you look at some of the best games and the flat thing that you want to look, did they win? Did they win? Because the team that he played on last year was not an ultra super talented team. That's the reason they were in position to draft Luka Doncic again this year. So if you look at he played really big in some games that they won. And if you look at how what his production was, how those games went, you can tell that they won because of how he played in those games. And some of those most impressive games, in my opinion, were games that took place on the road, which to me is a really positive sign of where potential is. Does he still need coaching? Does he still need to learn how to be a point guard? Absolutely. But he's only 21 years old. Okay. So 21 years old, uber athletic. I still think that it's possible with the right coaching. Like, I think a great place for him would be San Antonio. Like, because I know that he's going to get coached up in the right way in San Antonio. There's other places in the league where that can happen, but I think that he needs to play someplace like that. I mean, I'm not saying that if he stayed in Dallas and Luka Doncic never got there, that he wouldn't be a guy who could ultimately round into a right type of guard there. I mean, it wasn't as if he wasn't getting decent coaching there. Rick Carlisle's a coach.
Excellent coach.
So I think the maturation, we still, like you said, it does take some time for a point guard.
My problem with Dennis Smith Jr. that scares me is he does not seem to have the skills that he needs to be a great point guard. The skills that he has would be much better in a 3, but because I think athleticism is overrated if you're under 6'2".
But he's not, though. He's 6'3".
He's not a real 6'3", man. You watch him stand next to Russell Westbrook, he's smaller. Like, he's a smaller guard. I don't know what his actual height is. He might be listed as 6'3".
He looks like he's about 6'2", 6'3" to me. I mean, I think he's as legitimate of a 6'3" as Derrick Rose is.
Is Derrick Rose a legit 6'3"? I heard he was like 6'1" and change out of sneakers.
Derrick Rose was listed as 6'3".
Wasn't he measured at the combine as 6'2"?
He's probably like 6'2". He's probably like,
that was actually always my thing when people talked about Rose and Westbrook. I was like, Westbrook is bigger than Rose. He measured almost 6'4" out of shoes. And Derrick Rose measured almost 6'2" out of shoes, which is a big difference. And I do think, because my point with that is with Smith Jr., he has to jump really, really high to dunk on people. And he doesn't have the powerful frame to like post them up and body them on a consistent basis. He doesn't have a strength, size, physical advantage so that the athleticism is the icing on the cake, right? Sometimes you see, like Westbrook's been doing the baby animation all year. Sometimes he's just posting guys up. He's just like, you're too small for me. He's just a massive guy. Like, he's a big guy. Dennis Smith Jr. in NBA terms is not a big guard. He's a normal size guard. And at
the combine, he measured 6'3" in shoes.
In shoes.
Well, that's the only. But
that's what I'm saying. But I think that's the threshold. No, I think it does matter because that's the thing. Because you're looking at everything. You're looking at shoulder width. You're looking at weight. You're looking at wingspan.
But all of these heights are based on in shoes.
Let me finish my point. Because the things that contribute to you finishing in the lane are more than where your head is changed on where your sneakers are. And what I'm saying is Dennis Smith Jr. is exactly at that size where he has to use specifically the crazy jumping ability almost every time he goes up. And that's what's scary about him. He doesn't have the skill of a Kyrie or even Derrick Rose, young Derrick Rose. he had some ridiculous finishing talent in the lane. Dennis Smith Jr. doesn't have that kind of talent. He doesn't have the Kyrie Steph skill to throw up off balance, high arcing, different areas of the glass shots. His skill seems to mainly revolve around him jumping over you. My point with Westbrook is he's so big. He's bigger than Dennis Smith Jr. And he's so big that he gains an advantage before he jumps. Dennis Smith Jr. doesn't gain an advantage until he jumps. And until he develops other skills, that is a scary thing to look at that as potential. And I think people get overly enamored with it. Now, he is young, so he can develop those other things. But that's why my answer to this question was Dallas sees him every day. And if they're thinking of trading him, that means that they're probably seeing something similar to what I'm telling you. We have an average size guard jumping all the time, doesn't shoot great, doesn't pass great, doesn't play D. People think this guy's going to turn into Derrick Rose. Let's go ahead and cash in on that right now. And I think that might be the scenario you're looking at. I'm not writing him off because he's a young guard, and sometimes it takes a long time to click. But right now, the floor for Dennis Smith Jr. looks pretty scary. He looks like a backup guard.
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, so in comparison, Derrick Rose in shoes was listed as 6'2.5".
Yes.
In shoes. Russell Westbrook was 6'3.5" in shoes. Dennis Smith Jr. is 6'3" in shoes. Russell Westbrook's wingspan was 6'7" 3/4. His stand and reach was 8'4", which is pretty freaking significant.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking significant. Now, oddly enough, Derrick Rose's wingspan is wider than Russell Westbrook's.
Doesn't surprise me actually, because Derrick Rose looks like a smaller person than Russell, but I think part of the reason he was able to finish so well was because of the wingspan.
And then Derrick Rose's shoulders are, he even
which is another factor that I was talking about.
Yeah, as a young man, the shoulders were big. But I guess my point is,
but Dennis Smith Jr. looks smaller. Like smaller, as when I say smaller, I don't mean shorter. I mean smaller.
Just a smaller. He's a small. Like it's almost like when you're talking about fighters. Like you see fighters get in the ring or in the cage, and you just look at one guy and it's like, man, he's a smaller guy.
Yeah. I think Trae Young is in that realm where people are like, they thought he was 5'11". Like you saw him on all of the shows when they were doing the draft. They were like, well, he's barely 6 feet tall. It's like, no, he actually measures at 6'2". He's actually 6'2". But he's just a slightly built guy. Smaller. And I think, and that's my point with Dennis Smith Jr. is, in the open court, obviously he's going to do spectacular dunks, but in the half court, his athleticism is not, he doesn't have the other skills to make it the kind of benefit that I would really be excited about long term at this point in his development.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you kind of going against your own rule with the point guards by kind of summing him up a little bit too quickly.
I'm not summing him up. I'm saying this is where he is right now. Dallas sees him every day, and they have an opportunity to cash in on him when the view is a lot of people think he's going to turn into Derrick Rose. And if they think he's definitely not going to turn into Derrick Rose, then yes, you trade him now. Now, I think even if they made that thinking and they showed me all of their information and I said, this looks like a smart deal, I agree with it, that 3 years down the line, you could be wrong and the guy could still turn into Derrick Rose. I'm maintaining that. But does it look like he will at this particular point? No, it does not look like it.
I don't know. I think it's he's obviously in a different situation than Rose. He didn't happen to fall into the lap of the perfect coach for him with the perfect system for him. As a matter of fact, I would love to see Dennis Smith in Minnesota. I mean, Dennis Smith in Minnesota playing with Thibodeau, the way Thibodeau's offense and everything he does caters around small scoring guards. They all of them flourish when they play with him. They all do. And his teams usually overachieve. Usually.
Maybe the Bulls will trade him for Chris Dunn.
You know, I clearly, I've thought about that, but I don't think that I don't think that works because Dunn is a ball dominant guy too, and that's not going to work with Luka. Luka needs to play with a guy who plays off of him.
Well, Luka needs to play with a guy who plays defense. That's the number one.
Because Luka tries, but he is the heart. Him and Kyle Korver are probably the worst defenders that I've ever seen that actually give effort.
Yeah, because they look like they wearing flippers,
cement socks.
Like you know what I'm saying? Like they just can't.
They give effort.
They running around in snowshoes, man. Like
they literally give effort, and they're still bad at it.
They can't do it. Everybody's much faster than they are. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like they playing like the game is going at a whole different speed than what they can keep up with.
Yeah.
Like if I was Luka, I would just tell Luka never contest another shot at the rim because nothing good is going to happen.
Yo, he done got blasted like 8 times.
So many times this year. It's ridiculous.
Good credits to keep getting up, kid. That's what you do.
Keep trying.
But right now there are a lot of really promising young guards in the league. I don't think Dennis Smith Jr. has played his way into that conversation yet. He's not in there with the De'Aaron Foxes and what's his name from Denver. Jamal Murray.
Right? And Jamal Murray's not even a point guard in my opinion.
I mean, but neither is Dennis Smith Jr.
I think Dennis Smith. Yeah, I don't know, but I think Jamal Murray is an outstanding 2 guard who can handle and can be a beautiful secondary ball handler. But I don't think your team's at its best if he's playing point guard. He's your starting 2 guard, but I don't think your team is better.
Denver's making do. I tell you that much.
Denver has a heck of a coach, and they also have a ridiculously talented and versatile big man who can take a lot of those playmaking responsibilities away. So that makes a difference.
Which goes back to what I'm saying about Dennis Smith Jr. is he's not a playmaker. So when you talk about moving him because Doncic needs the ball in his hands more. Okay.
I don't think it's that he needs his ball in his hands more. Doncic is going to get the ball, right? But in order for the team, the offense to be as efficient as it needs to be, they see Dennis Smith. I don't think Doncic is not the problem, right? So you could give the ball to Dennis Smith, and then Doncic could be the secondary ball handler, and Doncic's a good enough shooter to play off of Dennis Smith. Now, will Doncic be doing everything that is, that fits him and lets him get to his potential? No, but he can still be effective. The problem is if you give the ball to Doncic, Dennis Smith's not effective at all playing off of him.
See, and this is what I'm saying. It's like, okay, so you don't have the raw finishing talent of a young Derrick Rose. And you don't have the skills of the smaller guards, like not smaller, but the less athletic guards, like Kyrie and Steph. You don't have the shooting. You're not a great passer. So that sounds like more of a really good backup guard.
But see, I don't
ideally, I mean ideally, like for a championship team.
See,
if
but
you
I don't
had
think
Dennis Smith Jr. coming off the bench, you'd be really happy. I'm not saying he's horrible. He's young. He's got to.
No, I'm saying I don't think he's horrible at those things that you're talking about, right? Like I don't think he's any less of a playmaker than Kyrie, right? But he's not. He doesn't have the beautiful handle, and he doesn't have he's not as good of a shooter as Kyrie, and he doesn't have quite as great of an understanding of angles when he's attacking the basket. But he's more athletic than Kyrie. He finishes at the rim better. He doesn't finish at the rim better.
Easy. We have a standard on this show, Brian.
He doesn't finish at the rim better than Kyrie. The only other non-athletic shooting guard that I've ever seen that finishes as well as Kyrie at the rim is Steph and Tony Parker.
Yes,
those are the only ones. Kyrie, but Dennis Smith finishes at the rim. It's different than because he finishes all with power and athleticism. Kyrie finishes at the rim with finesse and skill and understanding where to put the ball on the glass. But I don't think the fall off is as significant to the point where like Dennis Smith can't develop as a playmaker. It's not that he can't get better as a shooter. I mean, he's a 35% 3-point shooter, which is much better than Derrick Rose was at this time of his career. Much better. Right. He's not as good a free throw shooter, which I think is huge.
Yes, very huge. push because you're talking about a guy going to the rim.
Get there. You know, he's gonna get there. You got to make him though, bro. When you get to the line, you got to make him. And
here's when you say he's gonna get there. Here's the thing, because what we're talking about is going to a championship level. Because if Doncic is super young, plays up to his potential, which looks really high right now, and with a great coach and a great organization and some pieces around them already, you're talking about you want to make a push to be a playoff threat. You want to get to that level where you're in the second round of the playoffs with a chance to make it to the Final Four. And you want to get there relatively soon. In the next 3 years, you want to be having that conversation at some point. Next year would be ideal, but if you get there in 2 years, 3 years, that's fine. Okay. On that team, that's what Dallas is choosing. You know, we're not talking about pie in the sky here. We're talking about nuts and bolts. On that team, is he the starting point guard? Without the defense, mediocre three-point shooting, mediocre to below average playmaking, quite frankly. Yeah, you know, and you talk about getting to the rim and getting to the free throw line. Well, in the half-court set against a great defensive team night after night.
He doesn't get there as much as he needs to.
Right. And so that's and again, I'm predicating on this all on the fact that Dallas sees him every day. They train him. They know him. Everything I know about him is he's a great guy, great kid. So that means that purely on a basketball level, they're thinking, yeah, this doesn't fit. This doesn't work. And if that's the case, now is the time. Because trading him is going to be risky as long as he's under 25.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think we agree for different reasons. I don't have a bad feeling about his game yet. I to the point where I'm like, I have a bad feeling about the fit. I don't have a bad feeling about his game. And I think that's probably just where we differ in opinion there. But I'm sure we're going to differ in opinion with whatever your rant is. I don't know what it's about. I don't know what you have on your mind, but I'm 100% prepared to disagree because I'm 100% sure you're wrong about whatever it is you're about to say.
Yeah, to let y'all behind the scenes, we don't tell each other what our rants are going to be about. Well, at least that's been the trend the last few weeks. I kind of like it because we don't get a chance to really prepare. So you don't know what angle I'm coming at with this. And I realize this is going to threaten my credibility a little bit the way it's
You're wrong. You're wrong.
But this is an issue that I think people who've been discussing the league have that they need to come to grips with. Ben Simmons is a bit overrated. People refer to the Philadelphia 76ers as having a big three. Ben Simmons does not fit the description of what you would consider a third player in a big three at this point in his career. As a young point guard-ish player, my rule stands. Ben needs time to develop like anybody else. I think we judge him, his performances. I think we look at him and his game based on the fact that he's 6'10" and he has such a mature game that it's easy to forget just how young he is. And he did miss a year. But at the end of the day, Joel Embiid is a bona fide MVP talent level player. And Jimmy Butler is an established all-star.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
I knew that was going to hurt. I know that was going to hurt.
I thought I threw up in my mouth. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry.
But Ben Simmons in the fourth quarter is people look at his non-shooting. I don't think his non-shooting is that big of an issue because he's 6'10". And if you're 6'10" and you can get under the free throw line, that's not a bad scenario for most players at 6'10". And he's a talented enough, athletic enough guy that getting into that position, not a bad look for him. The problem is he is a terrible free throw shooter. Terrible free throw shooter. So when you combine terrible free throw shooting, the fact that not that he shoots a low percentage, but that he won't shoot from 18 feet out, won't take it. And then he finishes different in the fourth quarter because he's avoiding contact, the same thing people accuse LeBron of. Early in the game, you would have just dunked on him. But at the end of the game, you're trying to get the layup because you're afraid if you go to the line, you'll get one or none. And in Ben's case, you are going to get one or none. I mean, LeBron, he gave the little jittery in the fourth, but he was at least a league average to above average free throw shooter for most of his career. Ben Simmons is a bad free throw shooter, and usually in the fourth quarter, that doesn't get better. Philly does not have a big three. They have a potential young star, but that is cut by the fact that he has a serious couple of holes in his game that, in the case of Philadelphia, dramatically hurts their ability to win in the playoffs, particularly because Joel Embiid has not developed to the point where everybody's barbecue chicken all the time. And if he's going to get to that point, he needs better spacing. And Ben Simmons is not only killing that spacing, but when he gets the ball, he's compromising their situation. And Al Horford still plays excellent defense of Joel Embiid. And right now, when you look at the matchups in the league, it's not a good look for the 76ers. So stop calling them a big three. Ben Simmons is not at that point yet, and he has to either fix his shooting or free throw shooting and get both to league average before he deserves to be put with guys who are all-stars with a complete game.
Well, I would agree.
That looked like it hurt a little bit.
Well, I would agree. I would agree. He is not a superstar at this point. And to me, in order to have a big three, all three of your players need to be a superstar.
At least all-star.
You know, I mean, he's probably an all-star. He's probably an all-star. I mean, it would be difficult for me to say there are 12 dudes in the Eastern Conference that are better than him. You know, like, that's kind of tough. But I don't think that he is a guy who night in, night out changes every game. And to me, that's kind of what a superstar is. You know, he has, as you said, too many limitations. Everybody has kryptonite, right? Everybody got a thing, right, that they don't necessarily do as well as others, right? But the superstars have one of those things, and on a given night, even doing that ain't gonna work, right? You know, so it's like Michael Jordan was like, oh, okay, well, he's not a great three-point shooter. Well, some nights you can't even give him that. You know what I mean? LeBron, well, you're better off if you make him go to his left.
Sometimes that
ain't gonna even work. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, and then
his partner Embiid. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes Embiid to be hot from three, taking you to the hole, hitting his free throws, playing defense. Some nights he just have everything for you.
Yeah.
Ben is sometimes he's just a nothing on offense for too long of a time.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, and I understand he plays with Embiid, you know, but the fact that all of his numbers drop in the fourth quarter is not a good thing.
Yeah,
all of them. You know, in some instances, it's a picogram level of a drop, but it's still a dip. Do you realize, as bad of a free throw shooter as he is, right? His lowest, he shoots free throws the worst in the fourth quarter. Okay. And that's when he shoots the most of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So he shoots 1.6 free throws a game. 1.6 free throws in the fourth quarter a game. He shoots 49% from the free throw line in the fourth quarter.
Completely unacceptable.
Yeah, and here's the thing that's odd. In the third quarter, he shoots 74% from the free throw line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, his field goal percentage is pretty high in the fourth quarter, but he takes the fewest amount of shots.
Well, and this is why I think efficiency can be an overrated stat. because against a highly competitive team, sometimes you don't get highly efficient opportunities for stretches at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you need your talented guys, including your coach, to create opportunities to make low efficient things more possible.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw Kyrie Irving at the end of the game. We give Kyrie a lot of flack because he was another guy we were calling overrated. And I mean, I still stand by that. I don't think Kyrie is one of the top 5 or 10 best players in the league. But I do think Kyrie's a very good player. I've said that as well. But Kyrie's ability to finish over large defenders in traffic is actually elite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in fact, I said this way earlier in the year. Kyrie's post game is secretly like elite.
I mean,
in the post,
if
excellent defense by Jimmy Butler. It would be crazy. What did I say about Kyrie? His main problem is that he's not 6'6". If he was 6'6", he could have all the Kobe Bryant stuff. Well, he also needs to throw a little muscle in that frame and play some D, but which Kobe did. But yeah, I mean, from an offensive standpoint, if Kyrie was 6'6", he would be all those things we're talking about. But at 6'3", he needs to be a better defender and playmaker to transition into that elite level with the other guards who are in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just a lot of things, man. To me, you cannot be a part of a big three if in the fourth quarter
you're a negative.
You score less, you rebound less, and you get less assists, all in the fourth quarter. If that's what you do, then you can't be a part of a big three. They have the potential for a big three. And perhaps even as soon as next year, they'll have a big three. But right now, and until he gets to the point where he's got to get that free throw shooting up to at least like 67%.
Even better, man. He's got to hit 70, 75. Like, seriously.
He does. He does.
Because he needs to be comfortable going. And now let me explain why real quick. Ben Simmons is so good with the basketball, both passing and getting to the rim. And he's 6'10". This cannot be understated. The guy is a legitimate 6'10". He stands next to LeBron. He towers over LeBron James. And in as much as a 6'10" guy stands over a 6'8" guy, people always say LeBron 6'9". He's not 6'9", and you know that when he stands next to Ben Simmons.
Well, even though they're saying now Ben Simmons is actually 7 feet tall.
No, maybe then LeBron must be 6'9".
Yeah, because that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying.
A clean 2.5 inches over LeBron James.
Yes, now because they're saying that Ben Simmons, because he's grown 2 inches since he got in the league, and now they were saying this last year. I think it was in April. They were saying that he was a legit 7 feet tall now.
Maybe that's true because the guy looks enormous.
Yes.
Next to big players, he still looks big. So, and he's got a huge frame. The kid is, I mean, he was huge coming in. And he's just getting more swole by the day. So here's the thing. Excellent going to the basket. Excellent finishing talent. Especially earlier in the games when he's hitting his free throws. You finish a little better, right? Because you're not as tentative. You're willing to take the foul a little bit more. Obviously, super gifted passer.
Yes.
Right. Can see over the defense in a way we haven't seen since Magic Johnson. From the point guard position, LeBron plays small forward. Obviously, he has that skill, but Ben Simmons is over smaller players more often than LeBron is. If he doesn't fix that free throw shooting, it's going to be a consistent problem for Philadelphia. And it's the reverse of what happened in LA. It was a problem for LA because the games are too close for us to be dealing with hack-a-shack. Which is why Kobe Bryant doesn't get enough credit. And the teams that he faced will tell you this. You know, Reggie Miller and those guys will tell you this. Doug Christie and Chris Webber will tell you this. Yeah, it's the fact that he would come in the fourth quarter and kill us when we would think we could get Shaq sat down or something like that. When we wanted to hack Shaq, we didn't get a break because he would go off. Embiid is not to that point where he can go off despite the fact that Ben Simmons is getting hacked and sat down. I don't think that dynamic works when the other guy's on the perimeter and you need to be down low. He's got to fix it. And until he does fix it, Philly's in trouble in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it's too big of a liability for a guy that is such a big part of what they do.
Yeah, I would put that in their top 3 problems right now going forward.
I think it's their number 1 problem.
I would not necessarily disagree with that.
I think it's the number one problem, because I think that if he could be more aggressive and take the chains off of his game and off of his mind and the way that he attacks, because he felt more comfortable with shooting the three and with attacking the basket, going to the line and making free throws, I think that it hides many of the other deficiencies that they have across the floor, because it results in him keeping the ball just 2 seconds longer and making a positive play out of a situation, as opposed to having to give it up because now you're in a no zone. You know what I'm saying? And now you allow this great player to play like a great player. Right now, he's holding himself back because I don't think that, because if you talk about shooting form, if you look at Ben Simmons shoot, it doesn't look as if this is something, there's no Markelle Fultz thing happening.
No, I don't know why he won't shoot. Like I look at him shoot, and every time I've seen him shoot, it looks like, yeah, you should just be shooting. I don't know, just shoot it, bro. Why you're not shooting.
If it doesn't go in, it doesn't go in, but just shoot it.
Yeah.
You know, just shoot the ball, you know. So I think that, yeah, it's all in his head. And he just needs to just start pulling the trigger. I know he's shooting them in practice. He has to be. He has to be taking extra shooting. You know, I've seen him actually warming up shooting, right? And fewer of them go in than most NBA players I've ever seen doing shoot arounds.
Yeah,
I will give you that.
Yeah.
So because I've literally sat behind him while he was shooting at the United Center, right? And I'm like, yeah, you miss a lot more than than most every other NBA player that I've ever seen shooting, right? But it's not to the point where I would say you don't need to be shooting at all.
Well, because the way they're guarding him is so disrespectful in the fourth quarter. They're literally just surrounding Embiid and Jimmy Butler. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, forget you do whatever you want. We're just going to hang out back here. Like, even Lonzo Ball, who gets a lot of flack for his jumper, they don't guard him like that. They still defend Lonzo.
Yeah, because he can make enough of them.
Yeah, to help you win. But the fact that you won't take it goes back to what we were saying about Draymond. You can't look like you ain't even going to try.
Right. I'm not going to try. Forget it. Okay, that's it. Pass it up. Don't even look over here.
So the final verdict on that segment was, Books, you were right. I just want to hear you say it.
I wouldn't say, Books, you were right. I would say, Books, you're not completely insane, which is really different than that. So, you know, I wouldn't go that far to do that at all.
I realize that's the best you could do, and I appreciate you.
You know, it's so crazy to look at a video of Ben Simmons' three-pointers. Do you know the majority of them that he has shot in his career have come from nearly half court? Like,
all buzzer beaters, right? He like literally only shoots when he has to.
Yes, that is ridiculous.
It's crazy.
Like, what is going on with the people with mental instability in Philly?
Yeah, and this is what I'm saying. Like, if he was a superstar and he was doing this, they would be killing him.
Yes.
Like, even Giannis, and Giannis's shot is not pretty by any stretch. Giannis, when people sag off of Giannis, sometimes he'll just pull up in their face, and sometimes he hits.
Yeah. And sometimes he'll make it.
Yeah, he's like, you ain't gonna walk away from me.
Right.
That.
Right.
Like, that's what he needs to do. You know what I mean? If he doesn't start doing it, they're in trouble.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think everybody watching is in trouble because the show has come to an end.
Very sad moment.
And it's a very sad moment for everyone, except for my wife, who's producing the show, who's probably ripped just her face and hair completely out because
we went 20 minutes over every segment.
Like 55 minutes over on every segment. But it is what it is. It's okay. It's all right, guys. She says that she's bald now, which I'm hoping is not the case because we do not need to match in that way. All righty. So, but I appreciate everybody watching. As always, don't forget to subscribe, share this video, and also just keep staying with us. You know what I mean? Keep staying with us. We're watching and seeing the engagement. I'm going to make a conscious effort to try to respond to more of the comments that are out there that happen because I do read like almost all of them. So sometimes I kind of just like to let you guys have a conversation, you know, when you guys are talking, which I've noticed that has happened a few times. but I'll chime in a little bit more than I have been. So I appreciate you guys watching as always. For books, peace.
Pocket, I'll be weak. I'm rather unique.